right, we'll call the meeting back to order. First item on the, first of all, congratulations, Dr. Langford. You've been voted to be the next director of schools by the board. And I think you're up on the update on the regarding the third grade retention law.
First off, I'd like to just take a second and thank the board. I appreciate your deliberation and your support, and as always, anything that I can do. I know we'll have more time to talk in a few weeks, but I just appreciate each of you for your service and commitment. I know it's not easy to serve and deliberate and make tough decisions and tough votes. So thank you for the opportunity to interview, and thank you for the opportunity to stand before you tonight. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. And to jump into the wonderful world of third grade retention, as you know, there are things, I think Donald Rumsfeld summarized where we are right now the best, where he's talking about Iraq, and he said there's the things we know, there's the things we know we don't know, and there are the things that we don't know we don't know. So we're going to give you kind of an update on what we know and what's still out there, with the full understanding that there may be a few things, as you know, on this issue especially. There's a lot of fluidity still in the legislature. There's still the opportunity. I do think that they are committed to trying to get the best possible decision made for our kids. And so we're going to trust the legislative process and watch democracy be made before us. And we will communicate as soon as we know anything. And I'm gonna do just a little bit, and I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Hessen, because as you know, she knows third grade retention better than anybody probably in the state of Tennessee. And she's going to share some no pressure on her, but then we're gonna hear what she has to share about some specific things that we're sending home to parents and kind of our timeline. So as you know, it is April 4th, and we are getting close to. I know a few of you have had parents reach out to you about summer programming, and are they in? Are they not in? What's going on? We'll give you a little bit of update about that, and then I'm going to kind of give you the lay of the land for what comes when we meet back here on the 18th. Of some things that we'll have to do and where we are. But I'm going to let Ms. Hessen talk first.
I just wasn't going to stand there.
Okay. I'm going to let her give you a little update about home literacy reports and some other things that her department's working on.
Good evening. So presented before on third grade retention, a version of the timeline that's provided in front of you was provided to principals way back in probably February. This has been updated. There have been some adjustments, including a Facebook Live date added. This will be sent to parents on April 6th. Okay, just a little bit of overview and past communication. In early January, mid-January, we had our first parent communication coming through with retention as far as what our plans were, what the state expected that this was going to stand. Here's where we are. Here's what we know. Here's what we don't know. More information coming to parents, as the state said, by February the 1st. We had snow days. So by February 3rd, we had our second home literacy report sent home, and that was regarding the winter Easy CBM benchmark. The state is deciding or gauging student retention on two measures. One, Easy CBM, Universal Screener Testing Information, testing data. That is a normed reference assessment based off percentiles and compared to students across the nation. The state does approve that as our norm referenced test, and that's given 3 times a year, has been for years. Years and years and years, 3 times a year. We also have the TN Ready data. So that information per this timeline and state guidance is due to us by May 26th. Final communication for parents as far as, yes, your child is a candidate for retention. Get ready for summer school and or tutoring based on where your child scores is a 1 or a 2. Will be sent home by May 26th per state guidelines and state timelines. Okay, those are state dates that are set. So the first home literacy report was sent home in the fall. We benchmark in the fall, benchmark again in the winter. That was sent home February the 3rd. Looks a lot like the home literacy report that's shared with you. Looks a lot like this. The difference is that this particular one is for the winter, for Mastery Connect, and it says composite score. What parents were initially shared was not the composite score of Easy CBM. It was those measures separately. So you had reading comprehension, you had fluency, and you had vocabulary. Those were split scores. Students take 3 different assessments 3 times a year. Those scores are reported individually for parents to target their help. So if the student's doing really well with fluency, but comprehension is a problem, then we know more where to target for the support. The state soon thereafter, after that assessment or that report was shared, released a formula to build the composite scores through Easy CBM, and that's the score that will be reflected or was reflected when this was sent home on March 30th. So if you're as a parent, you say, well, this is the score that I got on the winter home literacy report. Here's my composite. That's the difference. Okay, sent home in the winter helps target where we need to help. Is it rate of reading, or is it comprehension? How do we support? This is the overall measure that the state will use as a guideline. Okay, and then also included in this report was our Mastery Connect benchmark report. This is an above and beyond assessment that we've taken for a while, a few years now, and it's closely aligned with TN Ready. It's a great predictor and gives us projections on what our students are projected to score so that we can make those adjustments along the way for our instruction, both formatively and summatively, and can adjust accordingly. And that score is reported here as well. It was reported as a 2+, 2-, 1+, 1- based on projections to the TN Ready test. Okay, so these 2 measures are what the state is using to screen students for retention. Students need to have a composite score in the 40th percentile or higher in Easy CBM, which is skills-based norm assessment approved by the state. And we're targeting for, based on current amendments to the bill, 50% or higher on the Mastery Connect benchmark. Okay? Gave a brief overview for parents of what those assessments are. And at the bottom it says your student is at risk for retention, is not, or due to additional factors like 504s, IEPs, or EL, or previously retained, they are not a candidate for retention. Okay, so this was sent home on March the 30th, following the one that was sent home on February 3rd. And in addition to that, to provide some extra clarity for parents, there's the timeline here. This timeline was shared with leaders way back in January. It's been changed, updated based on state guidelines and guidance. And this is what we're comfortable sending parents, that we are as sure as we can be that there won't be changes in the foreseeable future, right? Things like the appeal window. This is not an appeal window to say, not really gonna do the test. That's not what this appeal window is for. This appeal window is for students who score a 2 on TN Ready ELA portion. Okay, they score a 2 and they're waiving that additional support requirement or option of summer school or tutoring. If you score a 2, you have the option summer school or tutoring. That state waiver opts you out. I'm waiving it, I don't need it. Parents fill that out. Those appeals are made to the state. The state approves those based on the information gathered from that appeal form. Okay? So that
We got a quick question, if it's okay for Mr. Lancaster?
absolutely, stop anywhere. Yes, sir.
Mr. Lancaster?
Yeah, before we get way too, I'm not.
Yes, sir.
You know I got questions.
Yes, sir. All right, yes, sir.
Just first of all, you said the state recognizes 2 tests. One's will recognize 2 scores for this. One is the TN Ready.
Yes, sir.
Exactly, of course.
Yes, sir.
But the other is the Easy CBM, the winter test, right?
Yes, sir. There's a winter and a spring and a fall. Take it 3 times a year.
Winter. So they've already taken the winter.
Yes, sir.
They've taken the benchmark,
This
which
is
is
true.
both on those forms.
Correct.
They have not taken the spring that they will also.
Correct.
Right.
So the spring measure will be the end Easy CBM measure that is used to guide retention decisions. So this winter one is to put kids on radar. Hey, we've got some concerns. This is what we need to be doing to help your student along. This is how we're going to target instruction during Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, during RTI times. Here's our response to this information. Just for keeping us all informed.
So, so far, what parents have received
Yes, sir.
are just advanced warnings.
Absolutely.
Because it's confusing when we have 2 tests that are the same name.
Absolutely.
Just,
Yes.
I'm lost now.
So yes, so it's the same assessment for Easy CBM. It's just 3 measures or checkpoints throughout the year. Where are you in the beginning? What do we need to work on? How do we target that Tier 2 and Tier 3 intervention? Right. So I'm not quite where I need to be. How are we going to get you there? In the winter check-in, how are we doing? How's your comprehension? How's your fluency? What do we need to adjust to get you where you need to be, which would be grade level at 50th percentile? Okay?
And for a time or a date for parents, TN Ready is April the 17th, those 2 weeks.
Yes, sir. The 17th through the 2nd. Yes, sir.
When will this easy CBM that counts
Yes, sir.
be given?
The window is through April the 10th through May the 12th, and that's the window set by the state.
So do we do it based by, does individual schools decide when they
So
get it?
there's
or
some
is it-
flexibility in that based on it is an online assessment for many grade levels, and so there's things like access to devices, what's happening with TN Ready, whatever that schedule flexibility looks like within that window to meet the needs of those buildings.
Okay.
Yes, there's flexibility. Yes.
And going back real quick on the one that's most like the benchmark.
Yes, sir.
That was either a 3+, 3-, 2, whatever. As a district, does it normally track? I know it's the closest, but I've had conversations with some teachers that they seem to think that as a, not on a student level necessarily, but as a district, wherever we are on that, we're usually a little bit better on the actual TN Ready.
This is true. Yes.
Okay. Do
Yep.
we, as a district, know what we're looking at right now? Like, if that was the number,
Mhm.
how are we looking percentage-wise?
Do you want to speak to that as far as
Yeah,
the exact number?
I can, Mr. Langers, I can get the actual percentages. It's, for ELA, it's up pretty much at every grade level. It's a little hard to, cause like, what do you compare it to? But if we look at from where we were, cause you're looking at different kids. So if you're looking at third grade last year to third grade this year benchmarks, we're up anywhere 2.5 to 4 or 5%. So last year, I believe we scored about, in elementary school, I believe we scored about 4 or 5% higher on the TN Ready than we did on the benchmark. But some of that is because they still have another 4 weeks of instruction, 5 weeks of instruction after we give the benchmark.
But from a, I'm trying to think, do the kids, I guess everybody takes the TN Ready regardless if they're going to be held to this law or not.
Right.
When we look at the breakout, are we including those, or do we kind of take that out of consideration for like logistics is all I'm trying to think of, is do we have enough? Because we got to base, I assume we're basing staffing and everything else for the summer programs or tutoring, kind of somewhat on this.
To clarify, I believe the question you're asking is, does that number include students who would not be eligible for retention at all due to other factors?
Yes.
The number that we currently have would be including all students
Right.
for logistics to make sure that we're prepared.
Yeah.
And then we work backwards from our max number.
And it's hard to get an exact number because some of those are IEP team decisions. So, we really want to look at the best interest of the child on special ed students or EL students, like what's going to most benefit. Does retention help the child? Is that what's best for them? Generally, we're not in favor of retaining unless we absolutely have to, because
Right.
the evidence doesn't show that works. Now, I think the second part, Mr. Lancaster, if I heard you correctly, was about summer programming and the numbers there for logistics. This year, most of our schools that are providing summer scholars, where we will be hosting summer scholars, are larger elementary schools. So we're probably talking, like if you look at our numbers district-wide, I would say we've probably got about 400 students or so that are at risk of retaining. That's before we look at all the different factors. So, like if you divide that out over the number of sites, you're not talking about it's way logistically. We would rather add 2 classrooms at a site that we're already running than adding another site, because then we have to add custodial, nurse. I mean, the hard part is not like the money part's not as hard as it is like it's harder for us to find nursing support and things like that.
And can't say that word. The logistical part that I'm more concerned about is, I think the summer program is probably much easier than the tutoring part. Because, that's more of like, how many tutors are we going? And I know the state's talking about allowing us to do some online, and I'm sure y'all gonna get to that, but that's just
Yeah,
you know,
I can go
worst
ahead.
case scenario if the state does not, you know, what are we, you know?
If I can wait, I was going to hit that a little bit later. Can I
fine.
come back to tutoring in just a minute, and I'll turn it back over to Ms. Hudson
Okay.
Mr. Daniels?
Yeah, I had a couple quick questions. I know there had been some conversation at the state level about the appeals process. Have they made a decision as to whether the county can make an appeal for students district-wide, or is it still individual families?
So in the bill that's moving through the legislature right now, presuming that it passes, like if that amendment or if that bill that's going through the legislature right now does not pass, then only parents can appeal. But the amendment that's moving through allows us to get the schools to get permission from parents to represent them in the appeals process. So what we will start doing, Jane and I met this morning about it actually, or Ms. Hess and I met this morning to talk about it. What we will start doing is start communicating with parents to get that information. Like anyone that's going to get a letter that their child's at risk is also going to get a letter to say, hey, if you'll give us permission, we will appeal for you. You're free to appeal on your own. That's fine. But we would like the backup to make sure that we get the appeal done, because we're concerned. There's also some conversation that we haven't found substantiation for yet, that they may move the retest window a little sooner to catch Tennessee schools while we're still in school, because we all have a real concern about the fact that once schools are out, it's going to be hard to get a lot of our most vulnerable students back into the building to test.
And that was one of my next questions, is because TCAP retakes are May 30th and May 31st. And then you've got an appeals process that runs from May to June, which is right in the middle of Sumner Scholars. And so everything's all kind of jumbled together. Like as a parent, you've got to make a decision. You almost can't wait on the appeal. You can hope that it turns out in your favor, but you almost can't wait to see. And being in a county that's got more students than some others that may have to have an appeal filed just because of the number of students that we have, it seems pretty tight.
It's very tight. And when we talk about summer program a little bit, it's going to be even tighter because of where we are waiting on everything to get through the legislature. So I think that, that's why what we're going to try to do, the things that we can control, is getting in the hands. If there's nothing moved in a week or so, we're going to go ahead and send an appeal form permission home, just so we can start to get those filled out on the off chance that we need it. And then that way, we want to make sure for every student that's at risk that we can have communication with their parents. And we'll use Remind, we'll use every form of communication at our disposal to make sure that we get that.
Do we feel like we've been able to touch base with all the students that are at risk? I know sometimes communication with parents can be hard, but I had a conversation. I was at a sporting event for one of my kids, and I had a parent that had a third grader, and they seem like they know what's going on, but they weren't really familiar with this law. And so, I know there's other students and I know we're doing a lot to reach out, but are we sure that we've been able to contact the at-risk parents and say, hey, you need to know that this could happen?
Making every effort to do so, yes, sir. So we've sent through Remind, letters home, parent nights. Some schools are doing parent conferences and then phone calls home. So when there's a kid marked for retention and students marked for retention risk, they're definitely encouraged to make those phone calls home, especially as we get closer and closer to time. Here's your heads up, and then these are the next steps. And those are absolutely phone calls that are happening home to make sure that we've spoken with the individual for that student, to make sure that we've covered all the bases, because this is a very high stakes decision. And to leave it to a note in a take home folder we can make sure that these parents are well informed to the best of our ability, and that we're supporting them both through the support with the appeals process, make sure it's not a barrier in language or any of the tons of other things to support this parents so that they're making a confident decision for their student. So yes, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Gregory?
Either. How do we as a county compare with neighboring counties, and how does our state compare with other states in the southeast?
Mr. Gregory, it's hard to compare us to other states because states don't use the same scale. Now, within the state, you would have Williamson County would be above us. Wilson and Sumner are pretty close. Then you'd have Rutherford is there's below, probably 4 or 5 points. Then, you know, if you look out beyond that, our rural counties and our urban districts, some of those districts have 70 to 75%, you know, 60% that are in danger of being retained, which is a problem both. I mean, it's a problem because we need literacy to improve across Tennessee, which is a problem the governor's done an exceptional job of highlighting. The concern is, you know, to go back to earlier, it's the logistics of making it work to do what we can do to help in the summer.
I know of a student just scored 29 as a sophomore on the ACT.
Yes, sir.
Which is not too bad.
Right. That's really good. I think.
But that person only scored 25 in reading, which indicates it may be more of a regional issue than.
I think that it's, you know, we've talked about this before. It's a number of issues. I think, though, if you look at the things that we have in place, it's going to take a while for it to reach all the way to high school for ACT. But for instance, you know, I mentioned this last week. We have a reading interventionist at Nanny Berry that's taking kids from pre-K reading levels to 5th and 6th grade using the intervention materials that we have, curriculum, and the support and training that she's received. And so, like, you know, what we're doing is working. It's just going to it takes a little time. You're making a 5 or 10 year, and, you know, you're planting seed, you're planting acorns and growing them, not, you know, throwing a lot of fertilizer on something that grows quickly and fades away quickly. And you know, the thing I think we've learned from No Child Left Behind is that for a decade or longer, we reduced testing down to multiple choice tests and then tried to gimmick our ways through it, and that's left us with some of the reading crises that we have across the nation. Literacy across the nation is a massive problem. There are lawsuits in Oakland and New York City, several other states, where saying that denying kids the right to read is the denial of a fundamental civil right. And that's, you know, that's in districts that are very challenged, large districts, but I think you see the same thing in rural. I mean, we certainly see it in our district. It's one of the most important things that we do, one of our biggest commitments.
Two things to draw your attention to on this timeline. One, the retake window, that'll be happening. There's some talk around moving that to the 22nd. And then also the appeal window, and then when the retake scores will be available. The retake will be multiple choice. There will not be writing involved, and it will be online. So just wanted to give you an overview of that. And then if you have individuals who reach out, if your student is at risk for retention, please do go ahead and sign up for summer school if that's an option that's best for your family, to make sure that we hold that spot in our forward planning for logistics. But this will go out to parents and through Remind and through hard copy and through social media on Thursday. Okay.
Mr. Lancaster.
Trying to think which question to ask first here. One, I appreciate the Facebook Live. I hope that helps, and I assume that'll be then made available on the website or something, so people can go back and watch it if they can't watch it live.
I think what Ms. Hess and I talked about doing today is recording an actual video with the information in it, so we can script it and make sure we've got everything right. As you know, if you ever participate in a Facebook Live, they're wonderful because they're like online town halls, but sometimes it's hard to get all the information out that you want to. So I think our thinking is to put out a video where Ms. Hessen will describe everything that she shared tonight, but be able to utilize, you know, flowcharts and graphs to make it more understandable, you know, for people that are hearing it for the first time, and then come back the next week and do a Facebook Live so parents can have time to watch the video and then come in and we can respond to questions. It will also buy us another week to kind of see if some of the questions, you know, like hopefully by that point, what's moving through the legislature will be law, and we can say concretely, this is where we are.
So on Thursday when we got sent this home, we have a third grade Facebook group that you know our school created, and so I just posed, it's like, hey, I've got this study session, tonight, we're gonna be talking about this. Let me, what are your questions, and do you understand what's been, and for the most part, I think people understand what's been sent out. I think there is still a misconception that if they make a 1 or a 2, their child is gonna have to go to repeat 3rd grade,
Mhm.
which technically, yes, if you don't do the remediation process or either of those steps. But I still think there's a ton of people that just think that that's it. That's you make a 2 and my kid's got to go back to 3rd grade again. The other thing, the biggest question I've gotten is, my kid makes a 2. I know they're doing great and everything else. They just make bad on this test. If I pulled them out and homeschooled them for 4th grade and bring them back 5th grade, what has the state said any? I mean, is that allowed? Because I've gotten that question multiple times from multiple people.
The thing that we would have to do there is, I mean, certainly parents have the right to homeschool
Right.
their children. If you take that step when they come back to enter 5th grade, we'll have to give them a version of TN Ready. Like when kids come out of homeschool, we have to test them to see if they're entering in the appropriate grade level. So we'd still have to give them the TN Ready to come back in. Now when that happens, we do look at other things like age and things like that, just like we would on
Right.
the law as it's proposed now. But for some kids, that homeschool option might be the best course. But I think for most of our kids, I think probably the first thing that we need to do is beat the drums and shout from the rooftops and say, look, there are a lot of ways, and hopefully when we start sending communications home, they're a little more pointed. Because at the same time, I think it's a fine line that we walk, because we don't want to scare 3rd grade parents in
Right.
November, December, because those kids need time to learn and grow. And sometimes where a child is in October, they're in a totally different place by the time spring rolls around. And so we want to leave room for that growth to take place. But at the same time, we want to put them in the best possible position. So I'm hopeful that we can, the thing is, there are a lot of the appeals process. If there's 50% on the Mastery Connect benchmark, if that part is added, plus the 40% on Easy CBM, plus the actual TN Ready score, plus the retest, hopefully we can get enough traction in one of those areas where we can keep a large number of kids from having to be, from being retained.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing that I've tried to reiterate with parents that are concerned, is there are options that are not just, a lot of people are like, I don't want, and I understand, hey, you only got them for a little while. You don't want to send them to summer school if you've got other things that you want to experience as in the childhood and everything else. I understand that completely. And so for those, kids, a lot of people didn't understand the tutoring, and I said, well, from what I understand, and you guys tell me if I'm right or not, it will have to be during the day, during the normal school day, right? Is that what have we found that out yet? You don't know.
Let me, here's the problem that they're running into. The scale of the tutoring to meet the requirements of the law is massive, because in the law it's written at a 3-to-1 ratio twice a week for 30 minutes. So you're talking about an incredible number of tutors that no one's been able to recruit. Now, in that bill, it includes online tutoring to accommodate parents. Like originally the law said, or at least the intent of the law is that the tutoring would take place before or after school. That's what we've tried to do for the last couple of years while we participated in Reading 360, is to provide that tutoring before or after school with a licensed teacher, because we think that gives our students the best opportunity to learn. The scale of this would require us to learn, or to utilize everybody that we could to do the tutoring. But I do think that I think the reason that the online portion is in there is the only way that you can run this to scale is with that online portion. Because otherwise, to find places to do 3-to-1 tutoring. Now they have given us flexibility to add tutoring during the day. So we don't have clear guidelines yet on what that looks like, but I've heard, I haven't seen it in print, but I have heard that we're going to have the flexibility to do tutoring during the day. So your tier 2 and tier 3 kids would be in RTI, but if you had kids that you can have some kids that are above tier 2, but had a bad testing day or something like that and didn't hit any of the other appeals, and you could serve them during the day while they're technically in enrichment. But it's more than speculation, because I've heard it enough that I think something like that is coming, but it's not. The problem that we face right now is that the state board met in March, but the state board can only act on what's currently in statute. So they've got another meeting coming up in May to try to hammer out some of the details of this, but I don't know before May we're going to have all these details other than what comes through on the bill. Tutoring is definitely, I think Mr. King mentioned this a couple months ago, tutoring is one that's, because we've got this whole thing after, like if kids opt out of doing the summer to do tutoring next year, and so we moved them to 4th grade, and they do tutoring for say 3 or 4 weeks, and then they stop coming to tutoring, what do we do there? We're starting to get some language and thoughts about how to manage that, or at least how the state's going to ask us to report it. So those things are still a little fuzzy. Hopefully we'll have some answers in the next little bit on those.
Yeah. So
but I do think the online, because I think the thing we're going to run into is you've got a 3rd grader, like there are any number of 3rd grade parents that are saying we've got music lessons, we've got dance, we've got cheer, we've got flag football, we've got to stay an hour after school, Cub Scouts. We don't want kids dropping all their extracurricular activities. So we're going to try to create as many opportunities as possible for tutoring to meet our family schedule.
And I think the biggest, I think that's going to be the thing that most parents are going to be the most interested in, is what that tutoring is going to involve. Are there going to be transportation options if it's
Right.
before or after school? If it's during school, what does my kid miss out on? And am I wrong? We can't take recess. That's one thing. Parents are like, well, is my kid going to miss recess? And I'm like, people just want their kids to be kids for the most part.
Right.
Or related arts and stuff like that. And I'm like,
Well, it's like, when I was a middle school assistant principal, we started doing a lot of interventions during the day because it's the only time you can get certain kids because they don't have a ride. And it's like, what really fires a kid up is you take away their PE or art class to do a little 45 minutes extra of math. It doesn't really set their hearts on fire.
Right.
To learn math. So trying to figure that out is, and I hate, what I hate now is by now normally we would like to have a plan so we could communicate that clearly to parents. Here are what your options are. And the problem is we don't have enough. I don't want to tell parents we can do it during the day, and then something comes out in May or June, and we got to go back and say, well, we told you we could do it in school, but we can't.
Yeah.
Because there's because the flip side is you couldn't do it for kids that were in tier 2 or tier 3, and it's not fair to those kids to have to stay before after school when other kids can do it during the, it's
And the worst case scenario is going to be a parent that says, well, my kid can go to tutoring. Then come to find out, well, tutoring is going to be either before or after school, and I have to get them there, and I can't get them there. And it's past the July the 14th window for whatever, and we go to 4th grade, and they think, well, we're going to fly under. And then somebody from the states, like the 3rd grade retention police, comes in and says, well, you've got to come out of this class and go back to 3rd grade. But that's how stupid this is at this point. So
yeah.
I apologize for using the term stupid.
Ms. Lancaster, Mr. Graham?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've had a lot of parents reach out on the homeschool issue also, but then I've also had parents reach out and ask if for 4th grade they put their student in an accredited private school. Do we retest them when they come back from accredited private school?
There are different tiers of private schools, so they can actually go on online on TUE's website, and they have a list of schools that are recognized. Like, for instance, if you're at Innsworth, JP2, Good Pasture, that transfer just goes. There are some that you would have to test because they're just a variation of private schools right now. Some are kind of like I think they're all viable options, but some are kind of like homeschool associations where they function kind of like a quasi-private school. Yeah,
Right.
kind of like a co-op. Yeah. And so some of those, but it's almost a case-by-case basis, but parents can go on. TDOE has a list of private schools that are registered with the state, in the different levels, and they can find out, you know, if that requires retesting. I think like if I could go back and sorry, Mr. Graham, take a little bit of your time to answer, I think what Mr. Lancaster had asked. I think the advice I would give parents is let's play it out and get to June, July, and see what all of our options are before you just make, because, you know, the thing is they can make the decision, those that want to decide to homeschool, they can make that decision in August. And let us play out all of our options if their preference is to keep their child in their school, because I mean that's not an easy decision for a family to make. We want to give them the most information and the most reliable information before they make that decision.
A second question. So one of our interviewees, Dr. Scott Paul, he'd mentioned to us that one of the ways that he actually recruits teachers is he gets students who are in their senior year of college, I think is what he said, and they pay them $25 an hour to come be tutors, kind of see if it's a good fit. Is that something that we could also implement to find these tutors during school hours?
I think it would be wonderful. We're actually, Dr. Mel Sawyers went to a conference a few weeks ago, and he saw something very similar and came back. And, you know, we have a large number of seniors right now that are AP students or interested in teaching as a career, everything, and we have them in senior project right now. We could assign them as their senior project to come over and work with tutoring at the elementary school. And I think, like, I can't imagine anything more exciting than, you know, seeing kids from Gallatin High School coming over to Guild or wherever they went to elementary school and passing, you know, giving back. I think that would be that's a great thing that we can look into. I think that, you know, another side benefit of that is we're looking at ways to not only help our kids, but also to recruit teachers and start kids in high school looking at teaching. You know, Gallatin High School, for instance, has teaching as a profession. They have a lot of kids that are becoming involved and interested in teaching. If we could connect them where they could start tutoring, it would fuel that love of teaching and opportunity.
Mr. King.
Sorry.
Thought he had his line
Actually,
on.
it was, but my question was simply about high schoolers helping tutor.
Yeah, I think that's
Okay.
a great idea.
So my question is attendance. The attendance policy is a 90% attendance rate. Has there been any guidance on how we can be flexible with that? Because that's pretty
rigid.
hardcore. Yeah, 90%. And if
Yeah.
you know if they don't make it, if they're just under 90%, I mean,
Yeah.
can we really? Are we going to be sticklers about that? Or I mean, are there state guidelines that accompany the law that explain that?
I haven't seen any waivers of that from the state. I think like what the problem, Mr. King, is we still haven't received, like typically in about late January, early February, we receive a packet from the state that gives us an opportunity to request a waiver from the Commissioner of Education. And now I have heard that we can put in there whatever waivers that we want. One waiver that we would ask would be to be able to add days. Like for instance, we run ours 4 days a week. Like if we could have a 5th day on weeks, so like if your child gets sick or you have a trip or something, that takes a third, where we could create some alternative days. We've talked about, could we use an online option? Could we video lessons or use our lesson library or something like that? We're going to request a waiver for all those things. I would anticipate that from what I've heard, the commissioner is going to approve those, but there's not like a black letter law that says you can do these things. But from what I've understood, we're going to have a lot of flexibility on me. Because we have kids that are court ordered to go out of state because of divorce or things like that, or sometimes kids just get sick, and we want to be able to accommodate that as best we can.
Are we all done?
I've got one more thing. I just wanted to share with y'all because my department, nursing, like all finance, everybody's been working together. We have prepared as much as we can. We've got a pretty good idea what the budget is going to be. What we're struggling with right now is the timeline to get that before you, because right now the law covers, the first 2 years it covered rising first graders through rising 8th graders. Okay, so the law this year shifted to the state funding rising 4th graders through 8th graders. So the funding is not going to be the same, but in the governor's budget, it includes more money than we've received in the past because of the grades that they're adding. So our hope is that the budget will be passed by the time we gather again in 2 weeks. But what we will have to do, because we need to get summer programming, the funding for it approved here so that we can take it to the county commission in May. So I just wanted to give you a heads up. We will get that information to you as early as we can so you can have time to look at it. But basically, you know, it's like everything else that we do. The majority of the funding is for staffing and personnel to provide the summer programming. But we will get that to you hopefully April 18th, because we are on a, you know, Mr. Daniels, you mentioned kind of on a jumbled timeline. We've got a very tight timeline because we need to get it over to the county commission as quickly as we can so that they can have adequate time, because this will be a thing, because it's a grant from the state. That money will have to be amended into our budget by the county commission. And so we want to be able to present to them and share what we're going to do for summer and the sites and everything, and then also be able to get their feedback and everything, and hopefully move that through in May, because, you know, we are tight on our timeline.
All right, thank you, Dr. Langford.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is discussion regarding a revision to policy student attendance upon first reading.
All right. Hello, board, and I just want to formally introduce myself for the board members that I have not had the opportunity to meet. My name is Melanie Webster, and I am the current attendance supervisor. I came on in 2015. So, and my purpose with speaking to you tonight is to talk about our current board attendance policy. I want to kind of talk about maybe doing a short addition and a revision to our current attendance board policy. But before we actually go through that board policy, I want to kind of give you a rationale as to why I want to introduce these changes to you. So kind of want to explain that. Our current practice with our attendance policy is that our parents are allowed to write 5 parent notes per semester to excuse their child from school. So it's 5 parent notes in the fall and 5 parent notes that they are allowed to write in the spring. And also our current, the Tennessee compulsory attendance law states that a student is also allowed to miss 5 days of school for any valid reason, unexcused absence, that they can miss school. And they are not considered truant until they have that 6th day of unexcused absences. So if we are allowing our students to have 5 absences in the fall, 5 absences in the spring, and then if they have 5 unexcused absences, that is 15 days of school that is missed. The state also holds us accountable. We have an accountability rate to hold our student attendance of under 10%. So the state considers a student to be chronically absent if they miss 10% of school, which would mean that would be 18 days, because our students attend 180 days, so 10% of that is 18 days. So our current practice that we have now, we are already at 15 days. We are more than halfway there for allowing our students to be chronically absent. So when I came on in 2015, our practice was allowing those 5 parent notes per semester. After talking with several of our principals, we've developed a new, we call it our student support tactical team, where we bring in all of the departments. We bring in principals at every level from elementary, middle, into high school. And when we have these meetings, we talk about what are your greatest concerns and how can we help our students. And their concerns and what they address to me as the attendance supervisor is, we have to address our chronic absenteeism. And we talked about ways we could do that. We have 4 truancy officers in our county to serve 30,000 students. But what I want to look at and propose to you today is look at the chronic absenteeism. The state considers truancy and chronic absenteeism, they're different. So we want to look at ways, especially coming after COVID, we are still recovering from COVID. We have parents still that are concerned about sending their kids to school, but that has not changed the accountability from the state if I look at some data, this is from the state. So we had COVID hit us March of 2020, right? So we were out of school, and then we came back to school hybrid for 2020-21 school year. So the accountability that the state put on us at that point was a little lenient due to COVID, and the data from there, from 2020-21, our overall county data for all of our grades, K through 12, was 7.7%. Our high school was higher, we were at 11.8%, and kindergarten through 8th grade was 5.9%. So all but our high schools, we fell under the chronic absenteeism for the state. The accountability they held us more accountable when we went to 2021-22 school year, and it wasn't as good. So the overall county chronic absenteeism rate went to 12.7. Our high schools went to 16.8, and then K through 8 went to 10.9. So last school year, our county, we were all above the 10% chronically absenteeism rate. So what I would like to propose to you today is, if we could, our current practice is 5 parent notes per semester. Would like to propose that we reduce that and add into our board policy that we allow 3 parent notes per semester. A lot of our surrounding counties, they're quite different. At one point, it was 2018, I sat on an advisory board with the state regarding attendance, and I told them our board policy, what our practice was, and we were we allowed the most parent notes in our surrounding counties. Currently, if I looked at it, kind of went to the board policies that several of our counties had. Robertson County and Springfield High School, they do 3 parent notes per semester. Williamson County, they don't allow it. They don't have a policy in place to even allow parent notes, neither does Trousdale County. Rutherford County only allows 8 absences per year, and then they do a truancy referral, whether it's excused or unexcused. Clarksville, Montgomery County allows 5 parent notes per year. And then Wilson County they currently do allow 5 parent notes per semester. So they are currently doing our practice. So you should have in front of you on your screen the few and the minor additions that I made to the board policy for you to consider. If you scroll down to, you should be able to see the second highlighted sentence that I have. I would propose to add, because this comes from the Tennessee compulsory attendance law, that parents are expected to communicate daily with the school to give a valid reason as to why their student needs to be absent. So I would like to put that in there, that we have that expectation that our parents do communicate with us when their child is not in school. And then if you scroll down some more, my second highlighted section, this is where I propose to add that a parent is allowed to turn in 3 parent notes per semester to excuse an absence. And then also a parent note is written for each day absent, not the event. What we have found with some parents, they feel that if they write a parent note, that the one parent note would cover 3 days or 5 days of their absence. So I'm proposing that we make it clear that a parent note would cover each day, not the event. And then also add that once the parent notes are exhausted, that they've used their 3 parent notes, the absences are considered unexcused unless accompanied by a doctor's note or other valid reason. And then the state lists reasons why we can have a valid absence, like if they have to go to court, if it's a doctor, if it's a funeral, if it's a military, like if they're having one of their parents is being deployed, or if we have, you know, it's like a religious holiday where we have to allow those absences. I also want you to consider with these parent notes, the state law also tells us that a principal has the right or can excuse an absent for an extenuating circumstance. So if a parent comes to the principal and says, hey, I've exhausted my parent notes already, but we have to go out of town because my mother is sick in Michigan and I have nobody here in the state of Tennessee to care for my child. I have to take my child with me. That is an extenuating circumstance that they can allow the principal know ahead of time, and the principal has the right to verify that absence. So they wouldn't have to use a parent note in that type of situation, and it wouldn't be an unexcused absence either. So, you know, those types of events, because we've had parental concerns about that, we can verify those types of absences. And then the last thing that I would like to adjust to our current policy is the very last section where it says the temporary quarantine. We added that to our board policy for COVID reasons. So it was for the 2021-22 school year. I would like to strike that because that is no longer applicable to our current situation. Any questions?
I didn't see who was first. I'll start with Mr. Wise. I hadn't heard from him tonight.
Well, thank you, sir. You know, I like what I'm hearing because tightening it up a little bit, there are a multitude of reasons children are absent. A lot of them not their own fault. So it can give us opportunities to find out what's happening. I like the part about communicating with the schools. When they do communicate, I don't worry as much as when they don't communicate.
Right.
I like what I see here. However, when would you like to see this go into effect? I'll give you my opinion before you answer that. I don't think it would be fair to make this effective until the beginning of the next school term.
Yes, sir.
Because there are probably several who have already maxed out, so to speak, or used half of, and I don't think it would be fair to all of our parents not to make it effective until next school, start of next school.
I would like to have it effective yesterday with what we do, but I do understand and I agree that there's no way we could put this in place now. No way. There would be no way to communicate that to our parents. And you're right, some parents have already exhausted their parent notes, and it would be an uproar.
Mr. Wise, Mr. Daniels?
Yeah, just a couple questions. So we've got the note in here, parent is allowed to turn in 3 parent notes per semester for an excused absence. So if they miss 3 days, that would be 3 notes, that would be their limit.
Yes, sir.
Once they've gone beyond that limit of 3, is that when the next level is considered unexcused, or what happens after that? And the reason I'm asking is I've got 3 kids in the school system right now, and a couple other ones in college and everything else. So big family, a lot of people in the house. If strep hits our house, like everybody gets it.
Right.
Like and we may get it on Tuesday and it goes around. And I'll be honest, like if my kid's sick on Wednesday and Thursday, they're probably not going to school on Friday, you know, because as my wife is a nurse, and you know, she's like, I just want to make sure that he's or she's fine before she goes. Now we've hit the limit. Now a couple weeks later, you hit flu season, and a couple people get flu in the house, and it goes around, and maybe there's a couple days there or something else comes along. So suddenly you're past that 3. So once you go past that 3, what happens? Is it? I mean, it says it's unexcused. You know, I guess you're getting the note verification, but is that where you're going to start getting the phone calls? Is that after 5, where it's tier 1?
Right.
Like what?
So if it is strep throat, you're gonna go to a doctor.
Yep.
And you're probably gonna get a doctor's note, which is an excused absence. So you don't have to use a parent note. So a doctor's note is a valid excuse for a student to be absent.
Gotcha.
So you're not using a parent note at that time. But to answer your other question, let's say that it is a stomach bug, and you don't always take your child to the doctor for a stomach bug. So they would write a parent note, please excuse Johnny for being absent due to a stomach bug. So he may use 1 or 2 parent notes for that. So what we have in place and what the Tennessee law, compulsory attendance laws tells us is that we as a county have to implement what they call the progressive truancy tiers. And so in tier 1, once a student reaches when they reach 3 unexcused absences, we call them in and we do an attendance contract, and we talk to them what's going on, why was your child absent, how can we help you. If that continues and they go to tier 2, we're gonna call them in and we're gonna have a meeting at the school saying, hey, it's not working, we're still absent, what can we do to help? And if it is valid reasons and they're becoming sick, we work with our nurse department or the nursing or the nurse at the school and say, what can we do? If the child complains of a stomach ache or headache, and sometimes our parents will just leave them home because they have a headache. And so we encourage them and talk to them at these meetings to go ahead and send them to school. If they have a problem and they're feeling bad, they can go to the nurse and let the nurse decide whether or not they need to go home. So if your concern is that may do a truancy petition, we're going to work through our tiers first. And we have interventions here. We meet here every other week, and we meet with families in the community to talk to them about how can we help with that. So it's not an automatic, we're going to a truancy petition. We're going to work through and allow them to either turn in parent notes, what doctor's notes can we get turned in. But our goal and the purpose behind this is communicating to our parents that we need you in our classroom. We need our students in our seats. What we have also found with a lot of our meetings that we're having with our parents, because we meet with them weekly, we are going in, our truancy officers, we're having meetings, they're sitting on couches with our families. We do home visits. We are, if they don't communicate with us, we're going to them. We're going to communicate. So, what we're finding is, we had to go out of town, and out of town is Florida. So a lot of our parents are using some of their parent notes for vacation. So they're not following our calendar that we have. They're picking their own time to go on a vacation and using their parent notes. So they've exhausted that, and when their child is sick, they don't have a parent note just for like a stomach bug.
How many doctor's notes are allowed? Is there a limit on that? Or?
No, sir.
Okay.
I'm not going to tell a doctor what
Okay.
I'm not a doctor.
All right.
No, the state law says that's a valid excuse. Same with the court note. They go to court. That we're accepting all of those. There's not a limit.
So on Monday, when my 10-year-old daughter stood in a room for 45 minutes and said she had no clothes to wear, standing in a pile of clothes, and I took the other kids to school and came back and got her. It was good that I took her to school and not just stuck her in a room all day.
Yes.
Okay. Just making sure.
Thank you, Mr. Daniels. Mr. Lancaster?
First question.
Yes, sir.
So, if I heard you correctly, this kind of came about because we had ticked up on absentee rate over last year, right?
Yes, and when I came in 2015, that was our current practice. And, I was questioned by a few other counties when I was on that committee, and it kind of got me thinking. And then also principals had also come to me, why do we have 5 parent notes? Why do we allow them to write so many parent notes? So that kind of, and at our student tactical support team, those discussions also came about.
So have we tracked? What I'm worried is we're answering a question that's already been fixed with, this was a COVID related thing where a kid, has signs of COVID. Everybody says, hey, you got to stay home to avoid spreading it. And so that's what parents have done the last 2 years, and we saw it, you know, the attendance rate decline, I guess, or the absentee rate increase, however you want to look at it, based on guidance that they were given from normal people, from, you know, doctors or the CDC, whoever.
Right. So if we took away COVID,
Mhm.
let's just pretend, I mean, I'm sure we would all love to pretend it didn't happen, but let's just say we took away COVID. And even before 2020, there were some schools that were at 3%, 5%. They were able to stay under the 10% chronic absenteeism rate that the state is holding us accountable for. But we had a lot of schools too that were above that. And so because of that, they had to put what they were in their school improvement plan, what were they going to do to improve their attendance. So even before COVID, this was an issue, especially in the high schools. Our overall, in middle school and high school, that was a huge problem. And some of our elementary schools were even over the 10%.
So my other concern with this, or like I say, 100% agree, you need to be in school as often as possible.
Yes, sir.
But a sick child in school is no better than being at home, you know.
Right.
And the concern I have is you're going to have parents exhaust their 3 notes and send their kid to school sick, which is not helping anybody either.
Right. We've had that same concern, and I've had that discussion with Miss Lisa Heron, our nursing supervisor. We have had that discussion, and we haven't. You know, part of our policy is, you know, you don't send a child to school if they have over 101 temperature, be fever free for 24 hours. But that's just for a stomach, you know, like a stomach bug or a virus. But if they have an opportunity to go to the doctor, we want them to turn in a doctor's note for that.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But, and then again, devil's advocate again. Sometimes I call my pediatrician and I say, hey, my daughter threw up this morning, or my daughter's got 100 fever, and they'll tell me, keep her home. You know, we don't have any availability for appointments,
Right.
but monitor her, and, you know, if she's better tomorrow, then send her to school. If not, we'll try to get her in. So that I just feel like there's some unintended consequences from this that I just want to make sure I don't want to punish parents for protecting their
Sure.
kids' health.
Sure.
And that's
Right.
100% agree.
Right.
That, and it's going to affect elementary kids the most, simply because those are the kids that are, you know, their immune system hadn't gotten to the point where they, you know, can withstand everything. You know,
And
I know when my daughter was in kindergarten, we had stomach virus 3 weeks in a row, and then we had flu like twice. So she probably was a chronic absentee kid.
Right. And I understand that. I mean, you know, when I moved from being a teacher and then working with our preschool population and our younger students, and I was in the classroom a lot, I've never been so sick in my entire life, because I agree, I understand that. But that's the purpose of our meetings. And our attendance clerks do an amazing job reaching out to the parents, trying to get a valid reason of why they're absent. And that's why I wanted to add in our policy that it is the parent responsibility to have that communication as to where their child is and why they are absent. And then we are also having those meetings, you know, and it may be, we did have a family where they got the flu, they had COVID, they got a stomach bug, they had strep throat, you know, all of those things happened and occurred, but we're having those conversations. My concern is that if we don't reduce this, a message too that we are sending, that remember the 5 and 5 and then another, we're saying you can go ahead and miss 15 days of school. So we're gonna have those meetings. We're gonna say, yes, I understand that you were sick, you know, and it's not those parents that, you know, are frequent flyers that already have a chronic absenteeism issue. We want to address those. You know, we want to, those families that get sick and maybe have multiple kids in their family where it could run its course through the entire family, we're going to understand that. And as the attendance clerk, a truancy officer, we are going to take that into consideration.
So with what I'm hearing you say, and I know we can't really put this in the policy per se, but as long as parents communicate with the school what the situation is, even if they violate the, you know, like, hey, my kid got flu and then turned around and got stomach virus a week later, you know, I might have only got a doctor's note for one of them, but we're not going to be like, okay, we're sending you know, we're not doing that necessarily.
Right.
As long as they communicate with the school what's going on, there should be some grace in that.
Yes, sir, and we're going to follow our progressive truancy tiers and have those intermittent meetings to say, hey, what's going on? How can we help? We may get the nurse involved. You know, why is your child, you know, so sick? Is there any education that we need to give them? You know, sometimes a virus is just a virus, but sometimes we need to provide some education to our parents as well.
And like I say, I think I would speak for the nurses and teachers both, that we just make sure we always stress, please do not send your kid to school sick, you know, because even if they're, you know, if you've exhausted these options, talk to somebody before you send them.
Yes. And
'Cause I just know some parents are going to say, well, I've used my 3, you got 101, but, you know, you got to go. And I don't want that to be the norm. So thank you.
Mr. Lancaster, Mr. King?
Yeah, so I'm kind of in the same ballpark with what Mr. Lancaster was talking about. So 3 parent notes, and after that, it's unexcused. Is that what I just want to get clarification on that. So
if they can provide a valid reason as to why they are absent, and a valid reason for an excused absence would be doctor, court, funeral, if it's a religious holiday, if it is, if their parents being deployed for the military. Those are all valid reasons where a parent note is not required.
Right, but let's say a kid is sick, they don't want to go to the doctor, they don't want to spend the money. Does there have to be a doctor note for each day?
Yes, the doctor would say, please excuse.
From this date to this date?
Yeah,
okay.
Yes.
But they may still not choose to go to a doctor. And if they don't, they have to write a note for each day.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So have you guys thought about, and I'm just putting this out there, what about 3 notes and each note covers a single event?
So,
because I'm just thinking, you know, if child gets strep, that could be 4 days, right? But that parent may not want to go to the doctor just because they can't afford it, or they don't have health insurance, or something. And then, you know, a month or so later, the child gets a stomach bug or something, and so they've exhausted their 3 parent notes pretty quickly without, you know. So anyway, it just seems like we're going to, like, back to what he was kind of saying, they may end up sending their child to school sick. So if we had, parents were allowed 3 notes but 3 events, I mean, is that a possible maybe amendment to this? I'm just thinking.
So if we say, kind of what I'm hearing you saying, if we allow that, let's just say that first semester, I have a child that's sick, and they can write 1 parent note, and they can say, oh, my child was sick. They're going to be out Monday through Friday. That's 5 days that they're absent.
Yeah.
So they're absent again, same semester, and they're out 4 days. That's 9 days already that we're allowing them to be absent. And then the third time, if it was another, and what we have found, and in the hundreds, or I want to say probably thousands of parents that we have dealt with just this school year, they will take advantage of some of their, if you say 1 note's going to cover 1 event, they'll take advantage of that. So that's why, you know, the purpose of putting this in place is to show that we want your kid, we want them in school. We
Right.
need them in our seats. We are trying to do a lot of catch up right now too. So we need them there. We need them, in order for us to teach them and use these wonderful curriculums that we have and we're trying to do, we need them in the seats. So that's the purpose behind it, the message that we want to send. But we are going to take in account those extenuating circumstances where illness may go through the entire family. And we are, our attendance department, nursing department, we are working closely, and we've developed a whole, we haven't introduced it yet to our principals, but a tier 1 intervention that they could use for nursing. We've made notes, or letters that we've sent out to a lot of our local doctors' offices, because sometimes a doctor will just write a note for no valid reason, and we want them to have an understanding that, hey, you realize that this child's already missed 25 days of school, and they're still writing doctor's notes for them. So we're trying to build a relationship with our local doctor's offices and get them involved in helping us with improving our attendance.
I mean, I understand it's a tough thing to try to fix.
Yes, sir.
So, all right, well, thank you.
Mr. King, Mr. Graham?
Thank you. So if a student hits that 10% threshold of 18 days or more, what's the repercussion? Do we lose funding? Does the state get involved with that student?
Yes, and we have had, of course, when we don't have our students in the classroom, we do lose funding for our average daily attendance or membership. And we have some of our schools, because of their chronic absenteeism rate, they haven't been considered a reward school, so they haven't been able to get that, even though they've done all the other wonderful things, but they have lost the ability to be a reward school as well because of their chronic absenteeism.
Yeah, I'm sort of more on the pro-parent discretion on things, but I like the idea of a parent reaching out to the school every day and give the school a courtesy, especially in elementary school, to let the teachers know. My kids are 17 and 13, so we've been doing this a long time and seen a few policy changes. Didn't it used to be, though, that like one note would cover an event? You were allowed so many notes per semester?
Not while I've been on board.
Okay.
Not while I was on board. It was always a note per day
Yeah.
for the absent. Now, doctor's note's a little different because
Right.
you can turn in one doctor's note, and the doctor may cover the 13th through the 17th.
Yeah. My fear is, I know you're saying, at these certain tiers, we'll basically reach out and kind of have a nice discussion, a general discussion with parents. But I think, kind of like what they said, I don't think parents are going to see that. I think they're going to just see the 3 notes, and after that they're going to say Charlie has to go to school whether he's got a raging fever or not. And then that affects the education of far more students than a little Charlie. I mean, I 100% agree that I think the biggest factor in a child's education is the involvement of their parent, and the parent encouraging a child in their education.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we also need to have balance and discretion for the parents as well.
Hey, Mr. Graham. Mr. Lacy?
Like I said, at my house, my kids go to school unless they're dying, so
Right.
they don't miss school for anything unless they probably have a doctor's note. But how do you properly send a note? Do you send an email to the child's teacher? Does the kid have to take a note in?
Right, so it could be in writing, it could be an email to the teacher, to the attendance clerk, it could be the old-fashioned, I'm gonna please excuse Johnny from school due to stomach bug for Monday and Tuesday, and it could be a handwritten note that the student turns in. For our elementary kids, they have their daily folders that go, the communication folder, it could be in the communication folder. Sometimes, we've reached out to them, we've done home visits, we've collected parent notes during a home visit and turned it into the school. So we're working with them to try and reduce those unexcused absences.
So, but
for the
email is good?
Email's fine,
Okay.
email. That's considered in writing, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Lacy. No one else? Thank you, Ms. Webster.
All right, if you have any other questions, I'll be glad to answer those for the second reading.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is discussion regarding the revision of policy
5.403, reconsideration of instructional materials and textbooks on first reading. Dr. Langford.
First, let me say before we get started and turn it over to our librarians, it's National School Librarian Day, and so we want to celebrate them. Very thankful for our school librarians. If you were a child like me, I spent quite a few hours in the library as an elementary and middle school student, and read a lot of books there at Beach Elementary and T.W. Hunter. But we wanted they started a presentation about a month and a half ago, and we wanted to give them an opportunity to come up and finish what they were sharing, and then any questions that you have before we move into our policy discussion.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm Doreen Brown from Station Camp High School, and I was speaking with you last session. And we didn't have time to finish the conversations that we were having, and I know in front of you, you have some documents that we've been drafting as a committee, and I'm just here to answer your questions. And we had a special event today. It was Library Legislative Day down on Capitol Hill, and a contingency went from Sumner County Schools. And we were able to meet with Senator Hill, Representative Lambert, Slater, and Garrett. And we were able to talk to them about all of the laws that are going on. We talked about the Age Appropriateness Act. We talked about school library collections. We talked about classroom library collections. And so we can answer maybe a few more questions about that as well.
Mr. Lancaster.
Thank you for being here. It was his fault that you got cut off short. You know, he got what he's doing. I was perfectly willing to stay and listen, but you know, the teacher classroom library issue. For what I understood, there was some proposals that was going to change or be amended, and now it's.
Yeah.
The last I saw, I watched it. It didn't make it out of the Senate Education Committee.
It passed in the Senate, and it fell in the House subcommittee.
It didn't pass the House Education Committee. Subcommittee.
And we were told today that what that means is that Sumner County teachers still have to supply the list.
Okay.
That is something that by state law they will still have to comply with.
And is that June 30th as well?
May 10th.
Well, we kind of set an internal date of May 10th, but we have, talking to Representative Lambert earlier this year, he said the intent of the legislature last year was to give our teachers this entire school year, but, you know, by May 10th, we're kind of winding things down. Our goal was to have a little bit of time in case we hit some technical snags or things like that, but try to have it done by around May 10th.
Okay. And we are letting them, or we are providing some sort of scanner that they can go in and scan the book, and then so
yeah, we have
on my kids' elementary website next year, I guess it'll have each teacher, and you click on the teacher, and then you see all the books.
We're going to do it by grade level.
Okay.
And so, like, you know, you'd set like a Beach Elementary 4th grade book list, and you could see all the titles that are in the classrooms there.
Okay.
And they have each K3 classroom has, K2 classroom has 5 iPads in it, and most of our elementary schools have enough technology. We'll reach out to make sure if schools having trouble with getting iPads to scan, we can move some around to make sure that that's possible.
Okay. Just a thought occurred to me the other day with this, because I saw somebody saying, hey, go help your, you know, if you can.
Mm-hmm.
Have we reached out to, like, I know everybody's needing service hours with beta and everything else. Have we said, hey, go help your teachers scan their books in to get your beta hours or your DECA hours or whatever?
That's definitely something that we actually talked about today ourselves. Okay. And as a Beta Club sponsor, that is definitely something that they can do for service hours.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lancaster. Anyone else?
Right, everybody bear with me, I'm losing my voice a little bit, but in here, I also linked up a new version of this policy 4403, just to kind of give you guys some sort of sense of where it sounds like the textbook commission guidance is going. They still have not officially placed that out to anybody. It was voted on. TDOE has yet to release it, but we found a draft version that was linked up to a newspaper article where the textbook commission said that it was mostly accurate, that there was just like a minor wording tweak. And so I worked up, the yellow is the stuff from that guidance, like definitions, what their steps were, what their criteria was. And then the green is just what I added in from the previous policy that we had looked at that I thought you guys would want to keep. And then the blue is just stuff that I highlighted that appears to be in the guidance that I want you guys to make note of, like we've got 14 days for the review committee. And then I also placed at the bottom information about the Library Materials Commission appeals process. If you wanted to appeal the board's decision to the commission, this is how you would do it. And so I just put all that out there for you guys to see and review.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Anyone else? All right.
Yeah, I've got a question. So I'm assuming this is going to be on the next meeting for vote. Okay. So we have two drafts in here, and I mean, we're going to pick one or the other. Is that how this will go? I mean,
This will be first reading. Is that correct, is it?
Yes, sir. It'd be first reading, and and yes, I would suggest that either you pick one or the other, or consolidate the two. I think that's probably something that's appropriate for you guys to be talking about.
So
You'll see it again.
okay, so this is first reading.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and then it'll be second reading. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. So you could adopt it on first reading, and then if we found that we needed something to add in by second reading, we could fix it.
Mr. King, thank you, Mr. Johnson. Anyone else? I think we're done. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Who was? Oh, yeah, that's what we're going to do next.
Oh, I thought you were saying we're done.
No, we was done with this subject.
I was ready to
You was ready to go to Wendy's, wasn't you?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Discussion, next item on the agenda is discussion regarding reconsideration request appeal for library book, The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky.
We have the book.
Copies, if anybody would like, can come check out from the Johnson Linden Library.
Okay, Mr. Lancaster.
The only thing I would like to, I guess, talk about on this is considering, and I can make a motion of this at the beginning of the next meeting, but considering moving this to the May meeting simply because I don't like discussing and voting on a policy and then turning around and enacting the policy in the same meeting.
Really, it's Mr. Lacy was the person that asked for this book to be on the agenda. So it really is more one of two ways. One, Mr. Lacy can agree to do that and we won't put it on the agenda. Or if Mr. Lacy wants it to appear on the agenda, you can move to remove it at the beginning of the meeting. It's a lot easier if you'll just talk to Mr. Lacy.
That's fine.
If he's in agreement with it not being on there until the policy is set, then we will do
And
that.
currently all the books are
Right.
with us for review, so it's not like
Right.
there's
It's not-
in the shelf if you're concerned about the obscenity aspect of it. Like I said, I don't like the look of making policy and then enforcing, that it might be perfectly fine. I just don't like it. To me, it looks better to have this discussion, make sure we nail that down before we then get into how we're actually going to enact it, because there's specific things with the review committee findings on this book that we have to take into consideration in our policy discussion.
Exactly. And so I would just encourage you to work with Mr. Lacy, and then you guys let Jeremy know what you want to
Okay.
do, okay? And then he'll communicate that with Mr. Brewer.
Seeing none? We're adjourned.